Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John's reports for the 4th of March. And well, yeah, we expected that move back towards 50% here off of the bullish kind of forced reaction simply because the DOC had gotten so low and we had moved that orange dip below the 7.5. Usually it's that little counter move. And it wasn't able to sustain itself simply because we saw NBI White continuing its lead in strength. They could have forced additional short covering, but there was no follow through. And once it hit that 50% and wasn't able to do anything, intraday was pretty clean how it just started to cascade lower. It's still an improvement from the shakeout from where it was, but you're still ugly numbers. Minus 12 range here still keeps you right at that cusp because minus 12.5, you're below that little line right here, and that's usually that tip-off point where you start to build some type of momentum, but you're doing so now here from below the 23% with NBI White rising. not your bullish case. It's particularly a problem because even on the S&P, you see the DOC steel reaching those extremes. Now, if it pops above the 13.5, you'll get a little bit of a bounce from it. But again, it's got to come back down. And with no reset coming back below, typically you look for that steel, not just to dip below cyan, but ideally below red to really get a strong reaction of reset of short-term buyers. And that's just not the case at this particular stage. So continued weakness. It's just a normal cycle, and this was part of that euphoria that a lot of people bought into at the beginning of the election. But like I said, it was going to take some time, and it was going to be a bit of a trud, particularly with a lot of the restrictions that were left from the previous administration, made it much more difficult. So money flocking into treasuries, reducing that yield. Not shocked at that. But this is a benefit here. Oil taking another little move lower, not significant enough to be broadly useful, but the further it goes, and particularly the first words and discussions about adjusting sanctions against Russia started to talk, and that would definitely have a impact to weaken the excessive pricing in oil at this particular stage. And that is your biggest inflationary mover right there. If you can cut that down, then you're really going to put a clamp on inflation and where it goes. Of course, Eurozone, very exciting because they're all very happy about the idea that the Euro is going to improve with the cheaper oil, but also because they're going to spend $500 billion to support Ukraine for the war to replace U.S. funding. At least that's the projections of what it will cost them, which means easy money and a lot more printing of euros. Crazy stuff, I know. But that's where things are at. And of course, gold rebounding on that, which is interesting because you get the rebounding gold at the same time after the giant crypto bonus for the big meeting that's coming up. It was just pump and dump. Everyone just sold off into that. Look at that NBI White rise. That is just clean. You still have a positive magenta, but you've got to have that over that 10 reading for it to be of much value. So when you do that over here, if you have your NBI, okay, then you're in good shape to create the short cover rally, particularly when you get over 25. It really juices it. But below this, no, it's got to be a much more significant push for that to have a positive impact, and ETH continuing also. And this is just, putting pressure on that wild speculation that takes place within crypto. So here's what we saw from that giant push move. You had the strong move of magenta, and that at the beginning of this, above that 23%, even with the white, that forced the short cover rally. It's cyan under red for all that time, and then the DOC spread took place after cyan under red, even though you had the full steel reset. So there was a potential here within this construct that you could have another pushback up, but that's exactly when white NBI spiked right above that 25, and magenta couldn't break the 25 level, and that last failure of the inability for it to break above the 25 to really drive things, and then the shakeout started to break down. And of course, that NBI white lead calling for a move to the zero, and it stayed all the way through until we got to the zero, and then was counter right there. So that's you can see the difference there. The NBI white rise, but the magenta leading it and then breaking over the 25 was enough to push things just above the 23%. It's hitting roadblocks at this particular stage, so it's a question of can the magenta hold up through that. But pretty clean from that action. Once the early positive extremes were filled, you were just waiting for this final breakdown setup before the further decay. And it finally took place further intraday, 5-minute chart here from that standpoint. So it started early on and kind of tried to hold up, but every time it hit that 50% level there, it just was in weakness. And then once the NBI white lead took, we went to the zero there, and then it did a super strong indication right there. You got the little last pump, and then it just fell apart from there. And here we are at post-market doing a little recovery, but not a whole lot of excitement within it. All in all, good stuff. Quite a nice volatility again to start, as what we were talking about. It's going to get fun and wild, and we get the big speech from the president, so we'll hear what he has to say later this evening, and that should be interesting stuff as well. Probably nothing that isn't already known, but there's always surprises. As always, anything relevant, I'll put on Skype chat for you. Have a good one. Trade well.